Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Watch Lookout. Today starts the beginning of detailed reviews of watches in my collection. We've got some slots empty, but that's only because they're on the watch winder. Actually, I do have more watches than fit in this case. And today we're going to start with a three-piece collection, and that is the Unimatic collection that I have within my collection. And so we're going to start this state of the collection review. Whoop, almost dropped one on the floor. With Unimatic, because that is the micro brand that got me back into my watch collection or watch collecting addiction. It all started with a Watchfinder & Co. video that I saw probably 4 years ago, maybe slightly less than 4 years ago. And I think I dismissed it the first time I saw the thumbnail on YouTube, but then I saw it again. It popped up again on my, I guess, homepage, and I navigated over. I watched the video, and I fell in love. So at some point, I visited their website, and I think that I probably wanted U1, Modelo Uno, but for whatever reason, they either were sold out or they didn't have an iteration that I was interested in. I was really intrigued by this, a reasonably priced watch that was made with good materials and had a lot of hype behind it. And I settled on this. I say settled on this. I actually found this watch to be a watch that I liked more than the watches that they had up to that point. And this is the Modelo 3, the U3-FN. I really like this watch. It was the most different of any watch that Unimatic makes. And this was also only one of 300 pieces, so I like that as well. Unimatic, if you don't know, is a brand that started in Italy in 2015 by two friends that were in design school together, Giovanni Moro and Simon or Simone Nunziato. So, yeah, this tickled my fancy. I was a fanboy at the very beginning, but now, not at all. I'm not at all a fanboy. But let's go ahead and get started with the review of these watches. Now, this is the U3-FN. This was one of a 300-piece collection. It's obviously got two subdials. It's powered by a Seiko VK64 Mecha Quartz movement. Offers 60 minutes of timing before it resets. It is a DLC treated watch, and it does feature a bezel that, whereas most Unimatics have a sterile bezel, this does feature indices on it. It's a very stiff bezel with 120 clicks, and it is just a unidirectional bezel. The watch itself, the dimensions are that it is 41.5 millimeter case diameter. It is 13.7 millimeters case height. It does have a lug-to-lug of 51 millimeters and 22 millimeter lug width. Let's go ahead and take off this NATO strap that it comes with. This watch was worn, I would say, somewhat extensively after I purchased it. However, I did wear it much less over time. I wanted to preserve its condition, and it is absolutely stunning in its condition, basically brand new. There are no dings or scratches or anything of that nature. I wanted the DLC treatment to withstand the test of time, and it has. It's a little blurry there. Here we go. I really like the dial because of the flat paint that they used. I think that's really nice. I like the ladder hands, even though I'm not really a fan of ladder hands. I think they're a bit boring, but here it just looks really, really good. The indices are obviously painted on, and it is like a maxi indice dial, which I also really like. I know that there was a U1 model that also used the same aluminum bezel insert as this watch does, but I feel like the numerals on this bezel, it doesn't really conform with the design language of the brand. I guess that's not exactly lined up, is it? It does feature a rather large 8mm diameter crown, and the pushers are screw down, and they're 5.5mm in diameter. There is a domed sapphire crystal, which has an annoying blue anti-reflective coating. That's one thing you notice with Unimatic watches. It does feature unique case backs with the models that they release. In this case, this particular model features a world timer, if you will. So it just basically tells you the time zones throughout the world, plus or minus UTC or GMT time. So that's a nice little feature. Interestingly, Unimatic has never felt the need with their DLC treatments to also DLC treat the case back, but they very well could have. I have watches in my collection that are DLC treated and the case back as well. You can see the crown is pulled out here, whereas I have owned this watch for 3 years. I very seldom wear it, and so that's why I have the crown pulled out, just to preserve the battery life. It is a nice watch, I have to say. The only evidence that this watch has any wear on it is here, the tang on the buckle, if you can see it there. There is some wear there. I don't know if it's just because it's painted and not DLC or PVD treated. I probably noticed that about a year ago. And another thing you notice about these watches is whether you wear them or not, the nylon obviously shows the wear. It's a cool little feature there, that little tag if you wanted to write down the ownership on it. Anyway, so it's a very nice watch for what it is, right? It's the most expensive of the three that I have. So then the next watch that I purchased was the U4A. However, when I purchased this watch, it was not available for sale, and I had to wait. So I was on I purchased it and I had to wait for it to be sent to me. And that was about a 5 or a 6 month wait. I think I ordered it in December, and I wasn't able to take possession of it until May of the next year. So in the interim, my impatience prompted me to order the U2F, which I have right here in my hands now. A really cool feature I like about the U2F, you see that as I'm moving it, the branding above the 6 o'clock disappears in the light. And that happens in the sunlight, indoors. You twist the watch just right and the branding disappears. I'm not sure why my camera is not focusing as nicely today. This was a watch I did not like at all from the website, but my impatience prompted me to buy it. Again, I don't think there was any U1 at the time that I could buy, so I pulled the trigger on this. But the irony is, this is my favorite of the 3 Unimatics that I have. There's more passion and detail in the construction and design of this case. And while I was waiting for this watch to come, I ordered the UBKU bracelet. It's kind of a tongue twister. And I really love this bracelet. I bought this for both the U4 and this U2 model. I actually saw on a website, a Dubai-based website, before the U4 was in my hands, I saw that they had put the U4 on the UBKU bracelet. And that is why I bought the bracelet. I knew I had to have this watch on this bracelet. However, after having put it on the U2F model that I'm holding, I really thought it elevated this watch a lot, and I love it. So this is the U2F. This is in the Royal Air Force Gray. That's the colorway we see here. It's got phantom, hour, and minute hands there in the same color. Excuse me, that same RAF gray. This is a smaller case diameter of, I believe, 38.5 millimeters. It does have a case height of 12.7 millimeters. Again, an 8 millimeter diameter crown and 47.5 millimeters lug to lug. And again, 22 millimeters of lug width there. I really love the way the bottom of the case there curves upward rather than downwards. That is something I don't think I've ever seen before. I really like it because it has this sort of like retro, aside from the fact that it's a retro Explorer watch in terms of appearance and design, it also is, very sort of 1950s UFO. It's very cool. I really love it. And I love this bracelet. This extension is genius. You see there? It's a ratcheting extension system. I mean, that is just awesome. And of course, this is a fully milled clasp, upper and lower. Twin push button release for the deployment clasp. On the back of this particular model, there is, I want to say, the angular mill. So, the back of each of these cases is offering you some bit of information that ostensibly you would use in the military or for survival or any number of situations. And in this case, angular mill is for being able to determine distances to target. So if you have two pieces of information, then you ought to be able to find the distance to target with those pieces of information and a little bit of calculation. So that's kind of a cool feature of this watch. The colorway is fantastic. Again, we have sort of I would not exactly maxi dial with the indices, again, painted on indices. The lume of all three of my Unimatics are Superluminova, but C1 Superluminova. I think the classic editions now that they make are C3 Superluminova, so a slightly better quality Luminova. It is green on all three of these watches, the color of the lume. And this was one of 500 pieces that they made. And it's, as I said, it's my favorite. I like it better even than the chronograph, the chrono diver, I should say. All three of these models also feature the same water resistance rating of 300 meters, so that's quite a nice thing. And finally, I received this watch when they started deliveries. This is the Modello Quattro, the U4-A. So this is the first iteration of the U4 that they produced. Came on this green NATO strap. This is a watch that right after I bought it, I was disappointed. I felt like the photography was more flattering than the watch in real life. I liked the idea of a fixed bezel. I like the idea that it appeared gargantuan, but this is really just a 40 millimeter case diameter watch. So that is probably a great size for a majority of people, but I tend to have watches and favor watches with more diameter than that. And I'm wearing a watch now that's 48 millimeters diameter, but in actual fact, the bezel is plus 50 millimeters. So it's really maybe too big for my wrist, but I feel like this one is too small for my wrist for what it looks like. I mean, it's kind of like a Hummer design, but then it's small. So it doesn't really make sense, in my opinion. This watch, like the U2, are both powered with the Seiko NH35. So both of them have ghost dates, because these are no-date watches. And that provides, 41 hours of power reserve. This watch on the case back features ground to air signals. So this is what you would carve into the dirt or lay out on the dirt so that somebody flying overhead could see what your needs were, whether it was for doctor, more ammunition, food and water, that kind of thing. So, a neat little feature. Again, an 8 millimeter diameter crown size. We have a 40 millimeter case diameter. Our case height is more substantial at 13.9 millimeters. Again, a 22 millimeter lug width. And our lug to lug for this one was 49 millimeters. But as I said, it kind of wears small on my wrist. I've worn this probably the least. Well, I have worn this less than the other two Unimatics that I have in my collection. Probably the second or third time I wore it, I managed to ding it against something, and I scratched it. We can't really see it there. I've changed my frame rate, and it also seems like it's affected my focus. But then I took a wood dowel, and I tried to sort of diminish the appearance of the scratch. And I don't know, maybe I extended the size of the scratch as a result. Anyway, it's quite subtle, but it's something that I notice. I can see it. So yeah, that is the collection of Unimatics that I have. Now that is a cool bit of branding right there. I do think that is genius. How many watch companies might put something like that on their crown, right? And you wouldn't even think that it was anything other than just a design, but this is their actual logo, and I think that is genius. Now, the summary. What do I think? Well, I think that these watches are overpriced and they underperform. The finishing on all of their watches is sort of a satin or a brushed finish. I think that is, that's just underwhelming. I think that the movements, now, obviously they've moved into Sellita movements for a number of their watches in the time since they released these watches, but I think for the price you're paying, which is anywhere from 400 to 700 euros, and even more now for the better quality movements, I think it's unacceptable that they used the Seiko movements. I haven't opened up the case back of any of these, so I haven't confirmed if they're SII Seiko movements, like actual Japanese movements, or if they're the TMI Chinese constructed variants of the Seiko movement. I feel like, they kind of, I don't know, I feel like they're taking the piss with their customers because all of their watches come on NATO straps. And the reason for that is because it's just less work for them, right? These are all made in Italy, but that is a loose designation because Italy doesn't have a law about what qualifies something as made in Italy. And even the guy's admission in interviews with Hodinkee and others, they readily admit that they source parts from all over the place, though they try to source as many parts as they can from Italy. The first versions of these watches weren't even made by Unimatic. They just had Unimatic badging on there. They were made, somewhere else, ostensibly within Milan. And I just feel like these watches for the price aren't worth it, frankly. They manufacture the exclusivity with limited edition watches, but that's not actually true at the end of the day because in reality, these watches simply exist in the hundreds and even thousands by now, just with a different dial iteration, right? So that's not really the same thing as a limited edition in truth, if it's the same watch. And that is kind of the problem that I have, is that these, for all intents and purposes, are just three models of watch. The U1 is what I'm holding in my hand, but with a fixed bezel. So that makes it a U4. But really, it's just a U1 with a fixed bezel. And I feel like it's probably time for that company to come out with something radically different. Not simply change the movement and the lume and make it 20% less case height or something. Not change the materials from 316 stainless steel to titanium. Those are all very nice achievements, but the two guys that started this company had an idea that they would constantly be elevating what they produce, and I just feel like they don't do that. I don't feel like it's worth the price. I don't feel like it's very exclusive. Fortunately for me, what happened was the country I live in reduced the limit that you could import. So watches like these were no longer in my my basket, and I had to start collecting watches that were $150 or less. The beauty of that is I discovered AliExpress watches, and now my collection is dominated by watches that are probably made in China and Asia, mostly. But they're all superior in quality to these watches that cost 3 and 4 times as much money. So it's, disappointing for me now when I think of Unimatic, or when an email from Unimatic shows up in my inbox. I'm no longer a fanboy, but I am thankful that I discovered this brand, because it got me back into watch collecting, and I really do appreciate that. I don't think there's anything else for me to talk about with this brand. I certainly am not going to be buying any more of their watches. For me, the breaking point, the moment of epiphany that I had, was when the first Hodinkee was available, and I had the GMT in my basket, and I was all set to pull the trigger, and then I saw an ad for Yema World Time Superman. It was slightly less expensive. It was a watch that had more patrimony, and I pulled the trigger and I never looked back. And for that reason, I am thankful, because it broke the Unimatic fever that I had. And I'm just not sure, how much longer it would have been. There were several of these more limited edition collaborations, mashups, that I wanted from Unimatic, but for one reason or another, I didn't act fast enough to get them. And now I'm thankful. I have these watches in my collection, and who knows, maybe one day they will appreciate beyond the value that I paid plus tax. But I'm not holding my breath. All right, guys, thanks for coming out. I plan to do sort of a slow state of the collection, going through each watch in my collection with a more detailed review, and I'll group them in terms of the brands of the watches that I have. I think that's probably the smartest way for me to move. All right, cheers, everybody. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for coming out.